Oh, let me turn this other thing in the background off.
I was going to say you might hear the sounds of Brooklyn coming through my window, but it'll be fine.
Sounds of Brooklyn. Yeah, I don't think it normally, like, I guess my my microphone is pretty good, so you won't. I normally don't hear any background.
Oh, great.
I don't know. It's I have this really good mic, and I remember one time I was doing a podcast, and there was construction like literally next door, and I was just like, "Fuck." And then I was just like, yeah. And then I played it, and I didn't hear it at all. And I was like, wow. And then plus, because I underlay the thing with some music, so you don't like, even if there was music, I do hear birds chirping.
Well, that's better than trucks or whatever, but we'll
I
be
know.
fine.
Usually, it's so weird because I think because my landlord people, they got rid of this tree in the background in the backyard, and because usually I have like a gang of birds outside my window just like chirping away. And my best friend would be like, "What is that?"
You're like, it's nature.
They're saying good morning, because I used to get it like at 5 a.m, just like,
Oh my God.
Are you like holding the phone?
I am, because I feel like the lighting in my bedroom is more ideal / I just like being in here.
Okay.
And I don't have a little I don't have anything to prop it on, so it's fine.
So thank you for doing this. And just feel free to, I just want you to be authentic and don't censor yourself. Just be as authentic you as possible. Okay.
Great. No problem.
And your last name is Bib? No.
Bebb.
Bebb.
Yeah.
Caitlin Bebb.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, guys. Welcome back to Crazy Juicy Love. I have a wonderful guest, a friend of mine / coworker. Her name is Caitlin Bebb. She is a new coach, a conscious dating advocate, and a writer. And well, first of all, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I was so excited.
Right. Yes. So this is a special show, different, along the lines of relationships. I follow Caitlin on Instagram, and she posted this post about friendship breakups, and I was like, "Ooh, what is like?" I want to talk about that. And lo and behold, she wrote an article called "Why Don't We Talk About Friendship Breakups?" And I was like fascinated, and I reached out to her. So here we are talking about friendship breakups in the article that she wrote. So I'm curious of like, what sparked you to even write this article?
Yeah. Well, I have started just sharing a lot of personal experiences, because I'm realizing the more we do that, the more people realize that they're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
And it was amazing, actually. I was super, not super nervous, but like whenever you're sharing something that's really true and vulnerable, you get that kind of prickly, like, oh, this is too
Right.
much.
It's
And
the
then lo and
judgment.
behold,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And which is hilarious, because it's like, oh, congratulations, you're a human being.
Right.
Yeah. Feelings, experiences.
Mhm.
And so you and others, yeah, it was amazing to me how people were like, oh my gosh, either I went through something similar or I went through that in a different way.
Right.
And my question is, so I shared a couple different specific examples in my own life of friends that I felt like broke up with me, but because they were, female friendships and not romantic relationships, the ending was weird and I didn't know how to compartmentalize it and I
Mhm.
didn't know how to feel about it. And I just think it's a little strange that it's not more of a dialogue in our culture.
Right. And like I mean, it's not like we think about breakups as far as romantic relationships. We don't really talk about that. It's not like I don't even know if it's a taboo word. It's just not something that's created, something that's not shared or talked about, or I did this or I did that. And uh and it's interesting when you wrote that article, as I'm like sitting here thinking about it and reading other articles, and like um we refer to them as like toxic relationships, and we have to like either make a decision, like either you say something about this or you break up, quote unquote break up with this person. Because you know um I'm a calling in the one coach, and I remember when I was in my program, um we have to coach each other. And so this coach, when we got to different relationships, and I wrote one of my best friends down there, and so he was explaining to me, and I was just sharing with him what their relationship was and how it fit into this category. And he was like, "What you going to do about this? You're going to have to break up with this person." And then I was like, I kind of like freaked out because I never had anyone say like, "Oh, I'm gonna have to break up with someone who I've known for like almost 10 years and who has had an influence, an impact on my life." And now that I've grown and I've like in this new place, I was like, oh my, like the thought of like how am I going to break up with this person? And I
Yeah.
know it's not going to end well. Like it, I was like, okay, at least I need to have a talk, because I don't want to just like rip the band-aid off this friendship, because that's what I was normally would do. I would just like cut it off, move along. And I'm like, what am I going to learn about that? Like that's, if I'm
Right.
always doing that, then
Right.
that's not really teaching me anything about relationships, uh, or how in a romantic relationship I can't just like, because most people just walk away instead of like, okay, this is what I'm dealing with. If I'm this
Exactly.
person, a relationship expert, I have to learn how to be expert in my own life relationships. And so it was it was a daunting, a very nerve wracking conversation to have, and just to tell someone, hey, I don't feel safe sharing myself with you, and this is why I don't call you, I don't reach out to you, I don't really share myself with you. And to say that to somebody you've known, it was I was so nervous, and I had to like literally pick up the phone, dial, say it right quick, otherwise I would have talked myself out of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you hit on a couple key things. One being that we, don't have like the languaging around it, or we're not sure how to approach a situation. And I think part of that comes from, you know, um, like societal pressure to like,
Right.
you have your homies from, when you were growing up, and
Yeah.
they're your people and they've been there for you. So of course you have to keep them around. And it's like,
Right.
no,
No.
we as human beings, we are changing, we are evolving,
Loving. Yeah.
hopefully always growing. And so if someone is not supporting you, and if someone is not a healthy mirror for you in
Hmm.
your current container,
Yeah.
it is for it's the best thing for both of you to let them go.
Right.
And you were talking about how like normally you would just be like, oh, let me stop talking to this person, which is what happened with me and some of my strong friendships. And it was almost like these people ghosted me. And I was like, hello, like we've
Right.
been friends for several years, like can I get an email?
Right. Yeah.
um, and I think that's the other key thing that I would like to shine a light on, which is also what I talk about in terms of conscious dating, is that people deserve respect and courtesy.
Right.
So if you are making this decision, that's great. But like you said, they deserve the uncomfortable conversation,
They do.
because ultimately, like you said, a friendship will be a mirror for a future romantic
Right.
relationship. So it's like, if you can't have that conversation with a friend, how are you going to have it with someone you're
Right.
dating?
And a lot of people want it to be easy, and it's like it's never going to be easy, because you're dealing with emotions, you're dealing with feelings, you're dealing with the history, you're dealing with so many different layers, and it's just never going to be easy. So, and I'm curious if like about the first like high school sweetheart. How was that experience? Like, talk about your high school sweetheart friendship that
Yeah.
you.
I labeled it that just because I was like, well, she was my, one of my best friends in high
Mhm.
school, my high school sweetheart. I think that story is probably pretty common. And I have sort of, like a total sweet nostalgia for like that relationship. So that one is sort of doesn't leave me wondering, like, we were friends,
Mhm.
we stayed in touch in college, and then post college kind of drifted apart, and I think that's pretty normal.
Right.
um for me, it was like a couple of these more like, met in adulthood
Mm.
friendships that then didn't work out, that I was like, oh, hold on. I thought we were having a good time here. And it's interesting. So we're talking about, this theoretical uncomfortable conversation.
Mhm.
I'm also picturing a scenario where you step into that space, and what if you actually don't have to break up with this person?
Mhm.
Like, what if just having that conversation sheds light to something that they were completely unaware of?
Mhm.
And you're like, listen, this is your behavior and this is how it's affecting me. And they say, oh my God, I'm sorry, I had no idea. And that creates space for them to do
Right.
possible work on themselves, and then maybe the relationship will evolve and you'll stay friends.
Yeah. And I had another a coworker friendship, I say loosely,
Yeah.
breakup, and I remember, we were at work, and she reached out to me about something. And I do a lot of personal training, growth development, this, transformational place. And she came to me about it, and she's like, oh, well, this helped my life. I'm really dealing with, because I thought it was about her career, but it's actually around her relationships with her, sisters and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. And then when I started to say to her, like, okay, well, what is that teaching you about yourself? Like, there's something you're unwilling to share or say about what you're causing in a relationship. And she kind of like froze. She's like, oh, it's not me. And I was like, well, you have two sisters that don't talk to you. It is a reflection of you. No, 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 it's not me. I said, okay, and then, and she kept coming back over and over and over again. I said, there's something you're afraid of dealing with yourself about this relationship. And she was like, well, what is it? I was like, I don't know. You tell me. It's your
Right.
life. It's your situation. I'm not a psychic. I know I'm a coach, but I only can ask questions for you to look. And if you're not, I was like, you're just unwilling to look at how you've caused pain in others. No, and I'm just like, okay, like I'm not gonna sit here and argue with you, whatever. And then I had tried to invite her to an event, and she got so upset, saying this nasty thing, and I had this thought. I was just like, why are you friends with this person? Like, why do you call this person your friend? Because this person does not want to deal with themselves. They want to be the victim, and they want to blame everybody else. And I was like, I have to keep my distance. It was my first time I had this thought about with her, and I totally forgot that I made this decision. And then another situation happened at work, and she didn't like something I said. I guess I said something about like I made a joke, and normally it wouldn't phase her because this is the relationship that we established together. We always made like these like off canny jokes and stuff like that, and this is what we built up over the years. And I was so shocked that um, that she was offended by what I said,
Mhm.
and I said, I think that we're done. And she looked at me. She's like, I know I'm just coming to you. I said, I really appreciate it. And I can see how what I said to you may have offended you. I said, but this is not the first time that this has happened between us, and you are accusing me of something that we both established together. And I've always been supportive of you every step of the way of your career. And you now you're saying I'm not. I said, you know what? I said, I'm done. I said, I cannot be around you anymore. And it was uncomfortable as hell, but it
Yeah.
was afterwards, it was a relief that I was like, no more do I can't, because at the place where I'm in my life, I cannot engage in that kind of those kind of people. I can't
Yeah.
engage in that kind of like relationship, even at work. Like I just can't engage. I'll be cordial, I'll work with you, but I can't engage in that anymore. She didn't understand. I was just like, you know,
Yeah.
um, yeah,
I'm learning in adulthood that it's like I only have so much energy and so many hours in a
mhm,
day. And that's not saying like, oh, I'm so busy. I'm saying like how I want to choose my time is so
right.
important to
It
me.
is.
And I feel like we are just, taught to like pedal to the metal, grind, hustle, all this. And I'm learning for myself that it's like, no, no, no.
Right.
That
Right.
is not the point of life. And so I am trying to like slow everything down.
Yeah.
And part
Yes.
of that is quality over quantity.
Yes.
So, I'm realizing I don't need 30 close friends.
Right. You
That would
know.
be nice, I guess. But so it's like the individuals that truly take the time to
Hmm.
answer my texts and, listen to me. I that energy is reciprocated. I'm
Yeah.
so happy to do that. And it's been amazing, when I've become more aware of it, how the people that don't really care,
Hmm.
maybe also we're talking about these uncomfortable moments. I think it's also possible for people to kind of fall away naturally.
Yeah.
And there doesn't have to be a blowout. There doesn't have to
No.
be a breakup. Um, I know I have people in my mind that like, if they were to call me today and be like, "Do you want to come over for dinner?" I'd be like, "Oh, sure."
Yeah.
But I'm not texting them every day. So there's also, I think, people can sort of fit in different little
Right.
like categories of needs. And one thing, I don't know if I shared this with you. So I've been technically single for 5 years,
Hmm.
and that time has been so invaluable because my friendships have become so important to me,
Hmm.
because that space of a romantic partner is not currently present. I'm finding that I can actually get some emotional needs met, some intimacy needs met from friends.
Hmm.
And that had never really occurred to me before.
Right.
Like, you can have an emotional closeness with someone and not have a sexual relationship with them.
Right.
And that has been sort of like just like a mind fuck, because I'm like, oh my God, like I actually don't need to date in order to fill certain
Yeah.
needs. And I don't know if people realize that.
Yeah. It is true. Like that is like, uh, a huge opportunity for people. And most people are so busy being a victim and dwelling in, oh, I'm not single, or I don't have anyone, or they're envying everybody else. And they don't see the value of the people that are already in your life. And and I say opportunity because your friends and family are a reflection of how you show up in relationships, and it's your opportunity to practice what you want in a romantic relationship, even though it's not sexual. Our friends and family are the opportunities to be what we want for that partner. Like if you want respect, I'm being respected, I'm being respectful. It's like your opportunity to be respectful, to have reassurance, to have, to bring value, to bring love, to bring intimacy. Like we can bring those things and practice. Our like Gabriella Bernstein says, like our each person in our life is our school, like our lesson
Yes.
to learn,
Yes.
and we miss those opportunities because we're so in the past or dwelling in what coulda, woulda, shoulda,
Yeah.
in the other relationships, instead of like, okay, I learned that what I should have learned or need to learn from that breakup. Now I can use my friendships as the opportunity to practice that, to have
Yes.
uncomfortable conversations, to have the intimate conversations, to share ourselves openly, wholeheartedly. Like our friendships, even sometimes in your work um,
Hmm.
relationships are they're all relationships are opportunities to improve, to grow. Every
Yes.
single relationship is an opportunity to grow.
Yes. I
Yeah.
totally agree. I think you and I earlier were saying, what is it? The 8 people that you surround yourself with,
Yes. Yeah.
like that's you.
Yeah, right.
So, and surround doesn't necessarily mean physically, like, which is
Right.
why I love, like, there is like bad things about social media, but I choose to see the benefits, which are, like, I have friends through my coaching program that I've never met in person that
Hmm.
I considered to be, like, they're becoming good friends.
Yeah. Right.
And they live across the country, and I think that is so beautiful. Or the fact that you or I can write something, share a post, and say, oh my god, that resonated with me, and
Hmm.
feel less alone.
Yeah.
So I feel like people forget that, like, yeah, texting can seem like banal, but like
Yeah.
it actually is a means of communication and connection.
Uh-huh.
um and I something you said made me think about, it's like, so let's picture a scenario where someone's like complaining about being single, complaining
Right.
about
Yeah.
dating. They're sitting with their friend, they're having their coffee or their martini, whatever, and they're just complaining about their dating life. Meanwhile, they're sitting across from someone who cares about them, who probably has their own stuff going on. It's like you could be talking about something else.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not saying don't complain about dating because it's fun,
Yeah.
but but
it's
like
it's it's fun
my
until it's like the same conversation over and over again.
exactly. Also, my question is, like, are you cultivating a rich life for yourself?
Right.
Are you just chasing after a thing to fulfill you, or
Right.
are you taking a look at, like, I look at single life as an opportunity to say, like, there's just so much space and so much
Right.
freedom. So how
Hmm.
can you fill that with stuff that brings you joy,
Joy. Yeah.
and have people that surround you that you can wake up in the morning and say, wow, I'm really lucky. Like,
Yeah.
I get to be alive. I get to do stuff in the world,
Hmm.
because that energy is infectious.
Yeah.
And so then, of course, if you're living in that state, someone's going to say, oh, hey, what's your name?
Right. And before I move on to the next question, it's like, I was listening to a podcast yesterday by Tony Robbins, and, he was sharing about he had just built his house in Fiji, and he invited all his friends and family to Fiji, and just to like be by the beach, and so they can appreciate the house and whatnot. And then he said when they arrived, it was raining every day, and he was just complaining. He was just so in like this world of, oh my god, what I'm gonna do. It's raining, it's ugly outside. And then he looked outside one day. He was like, his friends are outside in the rain playing, and then he was like, oh my god, like here I am complaining about something I have no control over, and my friends are choosing to be outside and laughing and having a good time, and I'm in the house doom and gloom while my friends are outside in the rain just having fun. So it's like
Yeah.
when you change your perspective around being single, then you're not in the doom and gloom. You're outside in the rain, just like playing with
Yes.
everybody else.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so, how do you know when it's time to either have that conversation with a friend or to break up with a friend? Like, what are some of the things you think are like, I think it's time to have that conversation, because most people don't even know. They're just like always pushing it on. I know before I started doing all this work, I would always sweep it under the rug. I wouldn't say, oh, I always would say, that's just the way that person is. I'm going to like trying to be nice,
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do
Yeah.
you how do you know when it's time to like have that conversation or to move on?
Yeah. I am a huge advocate for listening to your gut and your intuition. I think we all have an inner knowing we, like you're saying, you either choose to ignore or you can tap into.
Right.
One way that I do that personally that I think is a hugely effective tool is journaling. So whether that's first thing when you wake up, you can kind of just brain dump, stream of consciousness writing, or even like before you go to sleep, if you're kind of like, dozing off,
Mm-hmm.
or whenever. It doesn't really matter when you do it, but I think that is one way for you to ask yourself things like, how does this person make me feel?
Mm-hmm.
When I think of spending time with them, what feelings come up? What is the, excuse me, physical feelings in my body? Because the
Yeah.
body tells us a lot. So it's like,
Right.
does your stomach get tight? Are you clenching your jaw? Do you just have that feeling of like anxiety and worry
Right.
rising? If those are kind of the physical sensations surrounding this person, they're probably not someone you want to spend time with.
Right.
And only you are the best judge of yourself.
Right.
So I think it's like but sometimes it's funny, one of the friends I wrote about, actually, one of the best things she told me while I was going through a romantic breakup was, you're not ready till you're ready. And I have taken that years later. I still say it because it applies to so many things for me. It's like, think about like quitting smoking. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
are not going to quit smoking unless you are ready and you want to. So same thing with a breakup, romantic or otherwise. It's like, until you have made that decision,
Mm-hmm.
it's just not going to happen, which is
Right.
okay. You're allowed to live in liminal space. You're allowed to be uncertain. And I think, I think that's the key thing, is like just facing it. Or a new thing that I've come across that's kind of cool is, have you heard of mirror work, or have you ever done that?
Yeah, I do mirror work a lot.
Cool. Yeah. So that's something that's been surprising for me, that I'm like, oh, you're allowed to look at yourself in the mirror and have a conversation.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Um, and because that's not something that
Right.
society tells you to do. So I think just any means of self-reflection will
Mm-hmm.
be the pathway to an answer for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the good, I love what you're saying, because mirror work helps you, one, change your view of how to deal with situations, change your view about the other person, also change your view about yourself. It's just and changing beliefs and attitudes around you. So you can go out and tackle the day, be successful, or whatever. You know what I mean? And um and I believe, like, after you've done the mirror work, and you still, when you see this person, or when they call you or text you, you still have that feeling, even though you've done all the mirror work, you've changed your view, you approached it so many different ways, and you still have this feeling. It is time to have a conversation.
Oh no.
you know
Yeah.
uh
Yes. And it's interesting. I mean, the idea of like, I think about love languages, and this doesn't exactly translate, but people communicate differently, right?
right.
So for example, my upbringing, my mom's side is Irish Catholic, my
Mhm.
dad is like the white mix. So I was never taught how to uh, argue well. I
Oh,
was
me
never taught
too.
I was never taught how to express when I have a problem with something or an ill
Right.
feeling. And so my reaction to that was just to shove everything down.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
because of that, for many years when I was younger, I was so angry and I was so sad, because it's like I just didn't know how to express these
Yeah.
feelings. And so what would happen is, the people I was closest to, it would explode in
Hmm.
moments when I felt
God, you
safe.
sound like you're like recreating me right now. Yeah.
So, and this would happen with my ex. And one of the biggest lessons I learned from him, he's an incredible person. He held so much space for me, but he would say to me, Caitlin, like, you can't put everything on me. You can't take all your history out on
Right.
me. That's not my job. And at the time, this is, in my mid 20s, I was like, what are you talking about? that is your job.
No, it's not.
And it's
Right.
not until years later that I'm like, oh, that poor man. Like he, he loved me so much and he held so much space for me. And he was right. That was not his job.
Right.
It's my job to look at myself and to see what's there and to learn, figure out by hook or by crook,
Yeah.
in these uncomfortable moments, how to say, hey, you know what? I have to talk to you about something.
Right. And it's,
And,
and it's yeah, and I'm glad you're saying that too, because it made me think of like, uh Jada Pickett and Will Smith, and they talk about this and how one day Will Smith got fed up with her. He was like, I'm done with your shit. He was like, it's not my responsibility to heal you. It's not my responsibility to deal with your past bullshit. He was like, it is, he's like, this is what we're going to do. You're going to go and you're going to deal and know how to heal your own shit. And I'm going to learn how to deal with my own stuff. And then once we figure out how to deal with our own bullshit, then we come back together and create a happy relationship. Because he said, I'm done trying to deal with your past, like how somebody else treated you. He was like, I am done.
yeah.
And I can't
Wow.
tell you how what you just said, taking responsibility of your own shit in a relationship is so key, and especially friendships. And one of the things that is a good sign is like, okay, if you're being triggered by what the person is saying, that's a sign that there's something that you need to learn. Or if the person being triggered by you, there's something about you, what you're saying is being triggered. Like, and it's all opportunities for you to learn. Like, and it's like, it's not sometimes pretty.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, I just had one of my best friends. Uh, she was so triggered by one of her cousins who just, announced that she had a baby. She's a single mom now, and she was so upset. And she was like, "Why is this bothering me? Why is this bothering me?" She goes, "Oh, it's just that I feel like I'm not going to be needed anymore."
Yeah.
And I was like, and then she realized, because I sent her that Tony Robbins podcast, she goes, "Oh," and a conversation she had with another friend, she goes, "Oh, that's not true. That is something I just made up. That this
Yes.
person probably need me more than ever because
Yes.
she's a single person, not like the other way around. Like, our people don't realize that our brains are constantly creating and these stories that are not true. Then we live into these expectations, we live into these false beliefs or these false attitudes. And you know this is also that leads to like dealing with somebody who hasn't done a lot of work on themselves, makes it trickier. Going back to breakups, like, one of my friends, we hadn't spoken in a while, and this is the friend who I had a hard conversation with, and we ran into each other at a job, and he's like, I haven't heard from you, and I was like, I left you 2 voice messages. What are you talking about?
You like pull out your phone. You're
Right,
like, shall
right. I'm
we
like, what are you
play the
talking about?
tapes? Yeah.
Right. I'm just like, what are you talking about? Like, and he's like looking at me. He said, well, every time we talk, we always talking about, this transformational place. And I was like, okay, I haven't talked to you about that in almost a year. I was like, what are you talking about? And I just looked at him. That's like, I can't engage. Like,
Yeah.
I'm to a point now, even with friends or coworkers, when they're stuck in this past conversation, I can't even engage. I can't even entertain it anymore because it just doesn't serve me, doesn't bring any value,
Yeah.
and I'm taking responsibility of myself um, to not give away my energy to that anymore. Like, I'm not going to argue. I'm not going to defend. I'm just like, just end the conversation. Like, oh, okay, great. Okay.
Yeah. And I'm curious if anyone listening is thinking, well, like, oh my gosh, that's so harsh. But I think we are conditioned to settle in so
Yeah,
many aspects of our life that, like, yes, when you're first opening up to these concepts, it does sound really
right.
harsh.
It does.
But oddly enough, it ends up being the more loving way to behave.
Right.
If you are operating from a place of integrity and wanting to honor your highest self,
Mm-hmm.
your highest authenticity, these are the things that are going to happen.
Right.
You're not going to be friends with the whole planet.
Right.
You're just not.
And when you start to do and it is hard sometimes because you feel like you've hurt the person. Sometimes I felt guilty, you know. And I'll talk about this of a friendship, like your high school sweetheart, my version of it. Um, when I started to do it, I did feel a lot of guilt, like I've pushed him away, but I had to look at, oh my God, like my happiness just went up because I'm not engaging in this victimized conversation. And I started to see like my vibration started to go up, my happiness, my joy started to like really grow and expand. And I always come back to this idea when about I always heard this before, and like it said, you know, like when you're in a plane, I say make sure you put on your oxygen mask first before you put on someone else's. And I started to really understand and say, oh, like if I need to give myself love first before I give anyone else, because I'm always giving and giving and giving, then I have nothing for myself. Like,
Yeah.
and I have to take care of myself first before I start to give to others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the ironically, it's the opposite of selfishness,
Right.
because like you said, if you're empty, you have nothing left to give.
Right.
So you're just walking around a shell of a human being.
Right.
And
Right.
that is not what the world needs.
Right. You
The
know.
world needs people that are aware of themselves,
Hmm.
that choose how they, spend their time and their energy, and then, go out and enrich people's lives.
Yeah. And then going back to like, how do you know, you were talking about journaling and stuff like that. Like one of the questions that I asked when I started on this journey, like, what value does this person bring to my life? And that was the big question that I was like, wow, you know, this person does not bring any value other than like I'm laughing. Well, okay, I get that, but what value do I get out of being friends with this person? Are we
Yeah.
growing? Am I
Yeah.
growing? Am I learning from this person? You know, do I find joy and happiness and love every time I'm with this person? And sometimes asking that question, it was hard to like listen to myself and like nothing's there. I'm like, oh my God, like that can't
Yeah.
be true.
Yeah.
But and I remember when I was with my first boyfriend, and he would question me about one of my best friends at the time. He was like, "What kind of value does this person bring to your life? Like, you're always fighting and arguing." I said, "Well, we laugh a lot." He was like, "Okay, but does he push you? Does he like support you? Does he do this? Does he do that?" And I had to. It really made me angry because he brought that question, made me question myself and my relationship with my best friend at the time. And I had to really, really think about it. I was just like, wow, like he was like, you know, you're always pushing him. Why doesn't he reciprocate that to you? And I never like really saw it until he said it. And I hated my boyfriend at the time for saying that because it was so true. Like I was exhausted from pushing him and, you know, all that, giving my energy to him, and I wasn't getting anything back.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, like it's so true. And then I started to notice, and as I was, you know, thinking about this situation before we got into the podcast, and I would be in groups of friends with him, and then random people would say the same thing to me, like,
Wow. Yeah.
and I was like, and I was like, oh, like wow, this person doesn't even know me, and we're in the same circle at this particular point in time. It was like, how do you like? Even though he was a nice guy, and I said, well, he's a nice guy. They was like, well, nice guys also can be an asshole too, or
Yes.
be deceiving too. And I was like, wow. And then eventually I started to notice, like, you know, he stopped, you know, he was always late to like events that we go to, like getting lunch, getting drinks, like be waiting 30, 45 minutes for him. Like all of a sudden he started doing these things, you know, and he would text me back, 3 or 4 days. He would return my calls like later and later. Before, he never used to do that, and I just started to see our friendships drifting because he had created these new circles of friends, and he was a
Mm-hmm.
great guy. And then I remember the moment. It was like New Year's Eve. We had all, went over. I had went over to his apartment, and he was all with all these dudes. He was became this dude guy all of a sudden. And then
Dude
uh,
guy.
like he never used to watch football. Now he's watching football. Never used to watch baseball. He was doing all these things to fit
Mm-hmm.
in. He was doing all these things to fit in, and I wasn't that person. I was like,
Yeah.
you either accept me, or you don't. I'm not gonna like do things to fit in. And he was always constantly shifting himself to fit in whatever circle he was in. And I was like,
Yeah.
that's not how you build like really authentic relationships. And then they met these girls off the street, outside his apartment. They invited them up to the apartment, and then we
Sure.
went
Yeah.
we went to this, and then they were
Mm.
like, let's go to this thing. And I was just like, why are we going to this thing? They don't
Yeah.
even like rock music. Like, why are we going? And I was just so pissed. And we were on the train, and then my best friend said, hey, Jimmy, take a picture of me and the guys. And that like really hurt me, because I wasn't, that moment, he didn't consider me as one of the guys. And then one of the girls' uh, girlfriend looked at me, and she was like, wow. And that
Yeah.
was the moment I was like, oh, this is not the
This is
friendship.
it.
This
Yeah.
is like, no. And then
Yeah.
the friendship just deteriorated and deteriorated and deteriorated. And then we just eventually like, you know, separated, So
Yeah.
it was a long time to move on, but
Yeah.
we had to move on. Yeah.
Well, now that you went through that experience, I'm sure if anything like that were to come up again, you would recognize it right
Right.
away. You would be
Right.
like, "Oh, this is the sign that someone doesn't care about me,"
Right.
And it doesn't. I want to point out that it's like, we're not talking about people that have like really
Well,
betrayed
right.
you
No.
or
Right.
like physically hit you, or it's like little
Right.
things that indicate that they don't care,
Yeah.
such as not texting back for days. I'm sorry, we know we're on our phones all the
Oh,
time.
dad.
If you don't text someone back, that's sending a message,
Right.
both with friends and with dating.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, being late, that's not courteous. So it's like these little things adding up that it's like you could say, oh, that's not that big a deal.
Right.
But that's not honoring, that's not self-respect. That's, putting up with behavior
Right.
that isn't cool.
I remember he was 45 minutes late. I was texting, calling him, didn't answer the phone. And he showed up. I was like, dude, I'm like, what happened? He goes, well, I had to work. I was like, you said you had to work an hour and a half ago. I was like didn't even apologize. He was like
Yeah.
upset at me for like calling him out. And I said, you could at least text me that you had to like close down. It's just a common courtesy. I just couldn't believe like he did that. I was just like, never again.
Yeah.
Like I I need, as a friend, I want respect, because I'm respecting you. I'm giving you common courtesy. I'm giving you like, okay, I'm going to be 15 minutes late. Like if I'm giving that to you, I want that back from you. And
Yeah.
that's how you practice in relationships. Like you have to be what you want to see in other people.
Yes.
And if they don't give that back, it's your opportunity to say, hey, this is the kind of level of respect I want from you, because I'm giving it to you. And I would
Yeah.
appreciate it to have that level of respect back. And that's your opportunity to see if they react or not, then you know. In that
Yes.
moment, you do know.
Yeah. And I think also there's opportunity. I've been trying to, I still love making like cards.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for occasions or for random things. I have one friend who is so sweet. She will just randomly send me a card with a little note, and
Mm-hmm.
she says, Caitlin, I appreciate you because of this,
Mm.
this, and this. And each time I get one, I just get like chills, because I'm like,
Like a
she
physical card?
yes, in the mail.
Wow. Wow, people still do that.
And I'm not talking, it's not my birthday, like she was thinking about me. She, bought this thing. She wrote a thoughtful note, mailed it to me just because.
Wow.
And I'm like, whoa, like, this person, like, if a friend like treats me like that, then it makes, see, I love, because energy totally translates, right? So in
Mm-hmm.
my brain, I go, oh, okay, if a friend treats me like that, then a man definitely can treat me like that, you
Right.
know? So it's like, if I'm not settling in my friendships, I'm not going to settle in my romantic life,
Right.
which feels really good.
Yeah. So, I mean, how does one start to even have that conversation? Like, what do you?
Yes. I can't take ownership for this. I think I heard this from this coach Jamie Ray, who I love. He's also a writer coach.
Mhm.
He says you can start a conversation by saying, "Hey, this is really awkward and uncomfortable, and I don't know how to start this."
Mhm.
So, and then you just
Yeah.
start, because it's sort of like you're just opening that door, you're acknowledging the fear, and you're
Mhm.
saying, okay, I don't
Yeah.
know how this is going to go, so bear with me. Actually, oh, no, you know who I heard this from is this guy who you would love, Dr. Jeremy Goldberg. I'll send you his stuff.
Okay. So
Anywho,
yeah.
um, so that, you don't know how the conversation's going to. Oh, the other thing is setting up, saying to the person, hey, do you have 20 minutes to talk? um
That's
or
always like
however.
that's
Yeah,
always like we gotta the talk.
yeah, but I mean, at least when you set those parameters, the person knows something's happening, so
Right.
you're not ambushing them, you're not, um because that's not fair either, to be like, I'm gonna put this on you. um so I think setting up, maybe it's not in person, maybe it's over FaceTime or phone call. I think it has to be, though, let's be honest, like, it needs to be at least a phone call,
Yeah.
because one of the stories I talk about in my Medium article is, I this friend stopped responding to me, and so I eventually sent her an email because she wouldn't respond to my text. uh, and it was, kind of formal, but I was just like, please, please inform me the error of my ways, like, please let me know
My
if
error.
I've I was like, I feel like I've done something wrong, and I don't know
Hmm.
what that would have been. And she just responded, oh, I feel like we're in different places,
Yeah.
which was vague, and I felt like not true, and just like something to say.
Yeah.
At least she responded to the
London.
email, but I would have really appreciated at least like hearing her voice, having a conversation, and being like, that's fine if you don't want to spend time with me anymore, but like, what's in your heart? What's going on?
Yeah, because it's like it's ultimately like how can you grow, or both of you, how can you grow by not having that conversation? Because it just really leaves the person like in the abyss of like, what did I do wrong? What, like, you don't know um how to grow from it. Even if the friendship doesn't work out, it's really giving the friend who's been broken up with an opportunity to see how to grow, how
Exactly.
to, and that's even if you're going to break up with a friend. Um, it's also like getting permission, because sometimes most of us don't want to hear it, how
Yeah.
we need to grow. But it's really one, giving yourself permission to like put yourself in a place to like receive. Um,
Yeah.
and don't be angry. And that's one of the things I've learned too, like being in a place to receive. If you're being reactive, if you're being angry, you're not in a place to receive. You're not open to listening and and being in a place of like hearing what the person is saying, and not like have a response. Well, you did this, well, you did that, but what about like, oh, I hear that. I am not creating a space for you to be open and free. And that's what one of my friends said to me when I said to him, like, I don't feel safe with you. And he was like, well, I don't feel safe with you. And I said, okay, I can see how, like, by me shutting down, like me, you're not, responding the way you want me to respond, doesn't allow for you to feel safe with me. And I get it. Like, great. Okay, I have to learn how to create a safe space for other people to show up, and, or at least for him to show up, and it's all opportunity to
Yeah.
grow. You know what I mean? And I remember this one moment. I called up an ex one day, and I was, I was doing this like in this course, and they asked us to call people. It took upon my own self to call every person I dated, and we had asked this
Oh my
question.
gosh. Whew.
Well, it was a good opportunity for me. I was like, I need to learn how. I wanted to learn how to be better at
Yeah.
being romantic or being in a relationship, because these breakups didn't left with like, we just broke up. It wasn't no opportunity to learn. I really didn't look at it that way. And plus, I didn't want to bring or drag anything that was incomplete in those relationships to the next, because that's what most people do, and especially friendships. They have these incomplete relationships, and they don't realize that you're carrying that with you in other relationships and punishing them indirectly based off of like the other person. And I asked him this question. I said, well, have what is it that I still need to learn that you see? I can't remember exactly the question. And he said, well, and I can tell like he still needed to learn too. He was like, well, are you sure? Are you going to get upset if I say this thing? And I was like, I said, the purpose of this question and this conversation is for me to learn. I'm not going to respond. It's just for me to
Yeah.
feedback for me. And he said, well, when things get rough, you shut down and the conversation is done.
Mm,
And I was like, holy shit, I do that. When
mm,
arguments come up, if I'm not winning, because I'm trying to win,
mm.
I just completely shut down. The conversation is done and it's over. And now we're in this like awkward place. And I was like, oh, I can't do that anymore. Because then I'm not really, how am I supposed to grow in a relationship if I'm always shutting the conversation down, shutting the person down, and shutting myself down? I was like, ooh, I got some work to do.
Right, right. And that's the annoying thing, is when you start to change, grow, realize things about yourself. Once you have the knowledge, you can't turn back.
Right,
And it's so annoying.
right.
I'll speak for myself. You have the awareness, and it's like, I'm sorry, but it's like you have to. And I love it, because I've totally had those moments of realization when you're like,
Yeah,
okay, now I know. So now I have to change.
yeah. So, what are some of the things that you've learned from these breakups?
From my friendship breakups.
Okay, yeah, these friendship breakups.
Yeah, I think I'm learning in adulthood that you know, um, friendships can be perhaps like seasons, like there's a purpose for them.
Mhm,
Life is constantly changing and is in a growth cycle. So just because someone isn't in your life anymore doesn't
mhm,
mean that they didn't teach you something, doesn't mean that you didn't receive laughter, joy, experiences.
mhm.
So, I feel like people look at failed relationships as a failure, as a bad thing, and
Yeah,
I don't think you have to look at it that way.
no,
I think you can appreciate something for what it was, and that
yeah,
doesn't mean it has to continue.
yeah. And what do you learn about yourself from these breakups?
Um, I mean, you and I seem to be very similar in this sense that I need to be better about saying if something is bothering me, or
Yeah,
saying if I have a problem with
mhm,
something. Because
yeah,
that's the other thing about friendships, is I always was like, well, like I I don't want to get into a fight. Like, that's not
yeah,
our relationship. That's not how we communicate. And it's like, well, Caitlin, there's a middle ground between fighting and not saying anything.
mhm, yeah,
I can say, hey, when you did this, it made me feel this way. I'm still practicing that,
yeah,
because it's uncomfortable for me. Um, but I know that ultimately it's good, and it will
yeah,
just if it's a, you know, it's a friendship that's meant to stay, then it'll just strengthen our
Right.
foundation.
Yeah, and I've been practicing that with one of my best friends. Luckily, she has, done a lot of transformational work, and and I can tell when she's like off or in our friendship, and beginning when I started to ask that question, it's like, hey, is everything okay between us? Like I
Yeah.
noticed that, lately you've been a lot of, distance, and so, oh no, 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 it's okay. Just like creating a space, like just let
Yeah.
me know.
Yeah.
And I remember that happened like maybe earlier this year, you know, uh, I think, it especially started when I first became a coach. Like you always want to like offer help. You want to offer it because you hear things differently. You see what's
Yeah.
stopping them. And then like, yeah, my friend's like, hey, you can't be coaching all the time. It's like, I was like, I'm not coaching. I'm just asking you a question. Like the minute I ask, it's like the minute I ask the question, are you coaching me? I'm just like, no, I'm trying to like find out. And it's like, ugh, like I can't be myself. And I remember saying that, I was like, I feel like I can't be myself because the minute I say I'm a coach and then I ask a question and they're like, you're coaching me. I'm just like, no, I'm asking like I I'm trying to like like I
I'm
want to
listening.
know like listening, like what's there,
Yeah.
like I want to have a real authentic conversation. Like if you
Yes.
don't want to talk about something, sure, fine, but don't back me off by saying that I'm a coach, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But with her I was just like, okay, like I care about you and I want you to see you succeed. Then like I okay, but if I want it, I'll ask where I say okay. So I just like it was hard to back off.
Yeah.
A friend, like you see them, like like you want to say the right thing, but it's like, I was like, okay, you're like, whenever she's ready, I'm here. Like I
Right.
can't.
And that was you respecting her boundaries.
Right,
She asked for something and you said, oh, okay, like that's what I'm going to provide for you.
right,
Yeah.
and,
So it's
and
little things like that. Yeah.
right. Even though you can provide value for this person, the value can't be received if that person is not in a receiving place. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we're coming to the end here, and I ask my guests the same question over and over again. So you ready for the fireball? I
Oh,
call it love round.
oh, oh,
So what does a life of love mean to you?
oh, wow. A life of love to me means waking up and feeling a sense of purpose,
Mm,
feeling a connection to my own soul
mm,
and to spirit. Um, for me, connection and community are like pillars of my authentic code. So,
mm,
even if I'm not going to spend physical time with a friend or a family member, reaching out to them via text or calling, um, keeping in communication with people, um, surrounding myself with beautiful things like, plants, and like adorning my home in a way that makes me feel physical love in
mhm,
objects, um, moving my body so that I can love it and have
mm,
gratitude for it,
mm. Yeah.
nourishing myself, holistically, um, and just continually, trying to live in a place of love in the present moment, because I mean, it sounds cliche, but it's like we really don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I have found that the only way I continue forward is when I have more of those moments of
Hmm.
stillness and stopping myself and just savoring whatever little magic moment is happening,
Yeah.
whether it's like, I see the little, the last of the orange leaves, or one of my favorite songs come on. I'm like,
Mhm.
oh wow, I love that. I love that.
Yeah. And how do you live in the now, right now?
Yeah, I mean, breath is, I think, a key to that always, because we breathe without thinking about it. And sometimes we stop breathing.
Hmm.
And you have to be like, oh, right, I need to breathe.
Right.
Um, and then just surrendering to the fact that I'm not in control. That is one of the things. I always want to be in control, and
Mm,
reminding myself that I'm not is so liberating, and allows me to just say, you know what? How about just, be here right now?
yeah, wow. And how do you disrupt yourself?
Ooh, I think kind of what we're talking about, surrounding myself with people who ask me questions,
Hmm.
who challenge me, um, and then also asking myself those questions and
Yeah,
saying,
the hard questions.
yeah, where are you hiding? Where are you still
Mm,
bullshitting yourself?
good.
Because I have areas of my life that I'm still holding on to, that I'm like, no, I'm not ready to change here. And so every day I say, Caitlin, why are you holding on to that?
Yeah, good question. Yeah. And what does a juicy love life looks like to you?
Yeah. We all, of course, have to pay our bills and earn money. But really, outside of working to provide a life for myself, in my free moments of time, being very conscious of how I spend it. So for me, like I said, writing is so important. I've lived in New York for over a decade, and it wasn't until this past year that I started going to like the Catskills and upstate New York.
Mm,
And for me, I realized that spending time in nature is so crucial for me.
hmm. Oprah
Just
says that
to
a lot.
Yeah, I mean, in our modern society, we forget.
Hmm.
Um, and so I make it a point to go on little solo retreats. I'm not even, it's not like a weekend with friends. Like, I go by myself and I rent an Airbnb and I sit my ass under a tree.
Oh, yeah, this is basically what Oprah does. She's sitting on her big old tree, oak tree.
And I look at the mountains and I look at the sky and I breathe and I say, okay, in moments when I can't be surrounded in this environment, how can I take this with me? And
Mm,
how can I, when I'm having an uncomfortable conversation with a coworker, how can I bring that serenity?
mm, wow. And last question, like, what is one of your biggest lessons you learned from one of your friendship breakups?
Ooh, um, I think what you spoke on earlier is that people are your mirror.
Mm,
And, you know, I have a friend who used to say, we get the love we think we deserve. So
mm.
with friends, it's like that they were a reflection of my self-worth.
Mm,
So I had one friend who I met on my 30th birthday that she was like my party friend, and we would go out together, and that was my lifestyle. And that's not a bad thing, I mean, like, did we drink
mm.
too much tequila? Absolutely.
Like, yeah.
But yeah, did I learn from that? Yes, I did. Like, and she was such a magical, like, energetic person. And so there are parts of her that I can just look back on and say, wow, she lived in a certain way that I really admire. But we also, we are not on the same path anymore, and that's okay.
Yeah, good. And where can people find you in your article?
Oh, yes. So if you just search Medium, the website, the self-publishing website, I'm Caitlin Bebb. My website is in development, but I readily share on Instagram almost daily. So my handle is just my name, Caitlin Bebb. Um,
BEBB.
yeah, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing yourself and, creating your article. And I'm sure so many people are benefiting from what you have to say. And I so know your journey and your journey as a coach now.
Yeah.
And it found you. Yeah, thank you for sharing your heart and keep sharing yourself authentically. And people are going to resonate with what you have to say in this podcast. And thank you for just being here and gracing us with yourself.
Thank you, Jimmy.
You're welcome.